Welcome everyone to the Who Knows Dad podcast. Today we have ex-professional footballer David Lee, who made over 500 appearances and scoring over 60 goals in his career, playing for the likes of Bury, Southampton, Bolton Wanderers and Wigan Athletic. A big thank you to the Bolton Stadium Hotel for hosting our recording, but more importantly, a big thank you to you, the listeners. So sit back, relax and enjoy the episode. Let's go. And today we've got the ex-professional footballer David Lee. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Martin, for having me.
Oh, pleasure. I remember when I reached out to you about a couple of years ago, to be honest, and we just caught up there. And these things sometimes take time, but you're here today, which is...
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, when you did text me a couple of years ago, I thought you'd forgotten about it or you'd moved on to different ventures, but it was nice to get the text from you and happy to come in and have a chat with you.
No, I was gonna start with the fantastic David Lee, and I didn't want to over-egg the intro, but the reason why I was going to say fantastic David Lee is because, like I say, when I did reach out to you, you were straight on it. There was no kind of, I'll see what I can do. He was like, yeah, anytime, whenever you want me to be, we're going to do it. And that says a lot about the person that you are, David. So thanks very much for
thank you.
being here.
I'm always here to help people, and if I can help you, I'll always make the effort to do it.
Perfect. How are you keeping?
Really good, fitting well, thank you. Yeah,
you look
enjoying life. Yeah.
You look how I should look at nearly 40, and you're older than me, and you look a lot better than what I do. So
I do look after myself. The lifestyle that I've got now, I go to the gym in the mornings, early morning. Yeah. Good workout and sets me up for the day. Yeah. I've always been into my fitness, and I think if you are fit and healthy, it helps you along in life. So yeah.
Is that kind of the mindset that you have? I mean, I suppose it's part of your daily routine now, isn't it? Where you get up, gym, breakfast, and then the day's your own, then, isn't it? So does that come from just like your football and background, having to be a fit person? And
yeah, I think you get that self-discipline, and throughout football, you've got to be at your peak all the time. Well, actually, fitness-wise, you've got to be at your peak all the time. Not necessarily you're going to play your best games all the time, but I think it's an advantage if you can be healthy and fit and athletic. It stands you in good stead. So it is a discipline. And when you finish playing professional football, when you're not told to do it, that's probably the hardest time for your fitness to kick in, because you think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it the day after. But I've always had that self-discipline, and I get a buzz from going to the gym and staying fit and healthy, and that's why I continue to do it. And I would tell anybody, if they're feeling a little bit down or anything like that, get yourself to the gym or go for a walk and do something, get some exercise, and it doesn't half make you feel better. Yeah, it definitely does. I personally struggle with having that mindset. I tend to go through phase of 2 or 3 months where 2 or 3 months I feel very determined, up for it, really excited to be at the gym, and then it kind of just tails off because I think you go back to your old habits, and it's just having that structure. I think it's just making it part and parcel of your daily life, isn't it? It is, yeah, and it's getting over that threshold of wanting to do it and then doing it. And once you get over the threshold of being at the gym, you think, oh, I'm so glad I've done it. Yeah. But the mindset is, before you get there, you think, oh, I can't be bothered. And then you feel disappointed and guilty for the rest of the day, thinking, oh, I should have gone. Yeah. And for me, it's second nature, so I don't even think about it. I get up in the morning, I go, good workout, and then back. And like you say, it sets yourself up for the day. But everybody's different. Some people need to do it every day. Some people need to do it a couple of times a week. But for me, I love the buzz of getting up and feeling fit and healthy. Yeah, that's it's all about... that structure, make it part of your daily life, so it's actually more a routine rather than a chore. Like, because for most people, the gym is about, I need to lose a bit of weight, or I need to feel healthier, and it's more of should be a purpose rather than like seeing it as a way of, a bit like self pain, really, self-infliction of, I've got to go to the gym. You've got to have some enjoyment as well, Martin, when you do go. I mean, it's pointless going if it makes you ill, or if it's something where you think, oh, I can't be bothered, or it gives you that negative vibe, then obviously it's not right for that person. They might have to go walking or do something else. So it is very individual. Yeah, well, I mean, we'll touch on it a little bit later, because obviously being a footballer, you have to be fit, and we'll go through that. What I want to start with, Didsy, is a little icebreaker. Okay. Just to settle the mood a little bit. Okay. So I've got 3 questions. Right.
It's just a bit of fun. The first question I want to ask you is, if you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 items would you have with you?
It certainly won't be a mobile phone anyway. I think I love the gym, as we keep going back to. I definitely need a pull-up bar to do my exercises in the morning.
Yeah.
I think I'd have the radio, because I love listening to the radio. And probably, what would the third thing be? Bowl of porridge for my breakfast every morning.
Nice, nice. Just a question on the radio. What about batteries for the? Would you have to take batteries for the radio? Just thinking out the box a bit.
Well, after a few days and it wears down, probably yes I would. So that'd be 4 things, wouldn't it?
Give up the pull-up bar or the bowl of porridge.
Yeah, I'd have to use the tree or something like that for my pull-ups on it. Yeah.
You just have to sing your own songs, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Perfect. What's the best piece of advice that anybody's ever given to you?
The best piece of advice, probably whatever you're good at, do it to the best of your ability, and don't ever shirk on it or leave a little bit in the tank. Give everything you've possibly got, and then you'll have no regrets.
That sounds fair enough.
Yeah,
it's something that you hear quite frequently though, but I think it's very valuable information, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all you can ever do in life is try your best, and hopefully that's good enough.
Yeah, I think if you try and you don't succeed, at least you've tried and you've given everything. But don't look back and think, I could have done a little bit more, because you'll always have that regret. At least if you try something and you don't achieve it, then you've given your best effort. But if you do then and go and achieve it, then you think, wow, it was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like a third question. It's like 3A, 3B. There's two questions in this one. But what's your favourite meal, and what drink would you be washing that meal down with?
Well, I'll answer the second part first, because I don't drink. It will be a lime and soda or a blackcurrant and soda. Yeah. And any meal with chicken in it, that's for me. It could be roast chicken, it could be poached chicken, it could be grilled, it could be in a casserole, it could be in a curry, but anything with chicken, I absolutely love it.
Do you have that like kind of like on a daily basis, chicken? Like say maybe 7 days out of the week, is it like 4 or 5 times a week? Or?
No, not really. No, I mean, Joanne, my missus, she'll vary what we eat during the week. It might be salmon one night, it might be a curry the next night, it could be fish cakes. We vary it, so yeah. But if I was going to a restaurant, the first thing I'd look for is chicken on the menu. Chicken
menus. Yeah. It's good to have a little bit of variety though, isn't it? It's like the spice of life, bit of variety.
Yeah, and I think you can become a little bit stereotyped and eat the same things because you want to be in a certain fitness level or regime. But no, I like to vary food, and if there's something on the menu that I've never seen before, then yeah, I'm open to trying it. So yeah.
I'm feeling hungry already. Didsy, thanks very much for that.
No problem.
So let's go back to the beginning as far as you can remember, obviously. I'm going to say day one, but not many people remember the day they was born. But take back to our earliest memories of what you remember as a young David Lee growing up.
Yeah, I think as a young kid, you was always out on the street either playing with your mates football or cricket, or mostly sports orientated, or being adventurous and allowed to stay out as a kid till it goes dark, until your mum shouts you and says, get yourself in, it's time for bed, and then you don't say, I can stay out for another 5 minutes. But we're always doing something sporty or anything to be out with your mates and socialising in a way where I don't think kids do that anymore.
No, I mean, when I was younger, we had games consoles. Everybody had games consoles. No matter how old you are, games consoles were around for many, many years. I loved it as much as any other kid, but I was the same, always out, never in until the lights came on. Yeah. I mean, you hear that many times, it's quite cliche that. Yeah. Wasn't it until the street lights came on, that was when I had to come in.
And do you know what, we used to love it when the street lights came on, because then you could have a game of football with your mates and you thought then you were playing under the floodlights at a football stadium. Yeah. So I know things have changed now, but being back to my childhood, I absolutely loved it, because you were out there, you're adventurous. There was no rules and regulations, as in when you was playing with your mates, you just got on with it, and it was a great upbringing as a kid, playing out in the streets or the close with your mates.
Yeah, and What was school like for you? Was you into your education, or was it sport was kind of like the main thing and education came second?
I found the education difficult because my concentration level wasn't being sat in a classroom. I wanted to be out on the sports field or on the playground playing out. And the teachers who I had were fantastic from primary school all the way through, because they gave you that discipline to do your best at your education, knowing that David doesn't really like his education. He's more of a sporty person, but I was able to cross over the threshold into the sports side of it as long as you did your education. And I had a sports teacher at primary school, Mr. Madison. He used to teach us all the subjects, maths, English, but he was very sporty, so he knew as a reward, not just for me but for the class, he'd take us out and have a game of cricket or have a game of rounders or something as a bit of a break between lessons. So the sport was always there for you, so it made you concentrate on your education a little bit more at primary school.
Yeah. I mean, I was a sporty person myself, but not so much academic, unfortunately. But no, that's brilliant. So when you was a kid at school, whether that's primary school, high school, what was your ambitions? Did you know you always wanted to be? I mean, it's most kids' dream, isn't it? But yeah. What was your aspiration?
I always said I wanted to be a footballer, always. And the bigger kids or the teachers used to always say, oh, you'll never be big enough, or you'll never be good enough, you need to get a proper job. And I used to say, I'm going to be a footballer. And I had that mindset, I wanted to be a footballer. Realistically, was I going to be a footballer in other people's eyes? Probably not, but it was a pipe dream at the time, and because I was sporty and I enjoyed it, yes, I excelled at primary school and at secondary school at football, but you've still a long way to go. There's a lot of water to go under the bridge and lots of trials and tribulations before you actually get that opportunity to say to people, yes, I am a footballer. So education-wise, I tried my best. I wasn't the best education-wise, I'll admit that, but I always had a deep feeling that I was going to be a footballer. What I'd be if I wasn't a footballer, who knows, but probably it's something that I had a mindset on, and you need a lot of luck along the way and a lot of determination, and I was fortunate enough to get over that line and become a pro.
I think it's part of that, they call it, is it like self-manifestation and things like that, where you think of something, you believe in it so much that actually you just make things happen along the way and it all falls into place. And like you say, you need a little bit of luck, don't you?
You do, yeah. But you've also got to remember that to become a footballer, you've got to have a lot of good people around you, i.e. coaches, parents, football teams, the facilities to go on and play football. And from being a young lad and playing for the Cubs and playing for Gregson Lane Juniors and St Gerrard's, there's a lot of people who've helped you along the way, because you're one of many lads playing in that football team, and you've got a manager and a coach and parents to run you left, right and centre. So it wasn't just me who made myself a footballer, it was the people around me. Gregson Lane Football Club, my mum and dad, and people who you played in the team with, they were all a massive part of getting you to where you wanted to be on your journey. So it wasn't done single-handedly, it was done with a group of people, a community of people. And there were loads of trials and tribulations along the way, lots of highs, lots of lows. But when you love playing football, you're quite blinded to all that, and you let your parents and your coaches deal with the off-field situations. And as a kid, I was allowed to just go and enjoy it and do my very best. Well, not always be the best player on the pitch, but be able to go out and do something you actually love without even thinking about it. And you get on that crest of a wave. And I play with some great players who didn't go on to be footballers, but they were all part of that process of getting you to where I actually got to in football.
Yeah, I mean, something that you just touched on there about playing with so many great players that never went on to make it. Now, is that because maybe they just wasn't in the right place at the right time, or maybe they wasn't as dedicated, but they had all the talent but didn't have the hard work ethic? Is that kind of what happens at that?
Yeah, I think for me, looking back now with the experience I've had throughout football as a player and as a coach, you've got to have that determination and that desire And I think 90% desire and 10% ability, because there are times when you go through to becoming a footballer, there's times when things don't go right and you've got to keep going at it and doing at it. And you not necessarily have the best ability, but you've got that determination to want to go and do it. And I know players now, and I've got friends, and I've got a great mate, a lad called Andy Smith, who I thought was technically a better footballer than me. And we both went on the journey through our apprenticeships. And I think even to this day, when I speak to Smithy on a regular basis, I always think he was a better player than me. He had a fantastic left foot, but he didn't have that desire and graft to want to do the football. He's been successful in what he's gone and done now. He's had a fantastic career with what he's done. But from the football perspective, he didn't really have that desire and determination to carry it through. And I think if he had a done, and if he'd have had my desire and attitude, he'd have probably gone on to be a great footballer. But that's how it's a fine line between making it and not making it. And I don't think I had the best ability, but he had the desire and the determination to want to go and do it. And for me, it worked out great.
So, obviously, you mentioned a couple of your junior teams that you played as a kid. When was the moment when? I mean, it might have worked a little bit different to how it works these days, but you know, the modern day now, you get scouts from the clubs. They come, They make the contact with the coach, say, "What's his name? Can you introduce me to the parents?" and go through that process. Was that similar back then? And obviously, what were the academies, or I know it's like YTS, wasn't it, and things like that?
There was no academies at all. No. It was classed as centre of excellence, and I remember the day I was playing for a team called Lostock or St Gerrard's on a Saturday morning team. And again, we had some great players, and we had a little bit of success, and we won a few competitions or leagues and whatever. And I remember playing in a game at Lostock, and it was actually a home game. And after the game, my dad was approached by a man called Bernard Snape, who was then worked for Blackburn Rovers on the scouting side of it. And I'll never remember him, because my dad was introduced to him, and my dad said, "David, come and meet this man." And this Bernard was there, and I'll never forget him, because he had a little tin in his pocket. He got it out of his pocket, opened it up, and got some snuff and sniffed it on his nose like that. And he's like, "Hi, David, how are you doing?" And I said, "I'm good." And he said, "Oh, I'm a scout for Blackburn Rovers. We'd like to invite you down to some training sessions at Blackburn Rovers." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, yeah, of course I will." And that was my first port of call to be introduced to not staff, what do you call them? Scouts from a professional football club who came to watch it. But I mean, these days the scouts are not allowed to approach the kids. They've got to go through the clubs and whatever. But it was just sat on the touchline watching us, and they asked me to go down. And so I went down, yeah. It was just something as simple and as basic as that. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and then they had a lad called Fred O'Donoghue, who was also I think he was a chief scout at Blackburn Rovers. I remember him coming to my house with some forms to say, "We're going to sign you as an associate schoolboy forms at 14. And that's what I did, just sign on the dotted line. And it was simple and as basic as that. And that's how it started.
So can you remember how in that moment when, you know, the forms are in front of you, are you at the moment thinking, I've made it? Are you feeling you've made it? Or how are you feeling in that moment?
I was a little bit naive, really. To me, it was just, you're going to go down and do some training sessions with Blackburn Rovers. My first thought was, can I still play for my school? Can I still play for Gregson Lane Juniors? Can I play for St Gerrard's? And because then for Blackburn Rovers, they only played maybe once a month. So you had a training session a couple of times during the week, and then maybe play on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, but it was only on a monthly or 6 weeks basis. And then there wasn't proper fixtures. You just did arranged fixtures against other teams. So my first thought was, can I still play for my other teams, which was great. So on a Saturday, I was playing for my school on a Saturday morning. On a Saturday afternoon, I was playing for Lostock or St Gerrard's. on a Sunday morning, I was playing for maybe a town team or a school district team, and then Sunday afternoon I was playing for Gregson Lane. So sometimes you'd go home on a Sunday after a game on a Sunday morning, you'd have your Sunday dinner, and then you'd be out again for the afternoon. So I was playing 4 games in a weekend and never even thought about it. Just did it and enjoyed it. Never thought about fatigue or tiredness or will I be tired for school. I just went and played. And then you were training during the week as well.
I think that's all you want to do. Is somebody who wants to be a footballer. Just most kids in general, all they want to do is play football, all day, all night, any spare time that they've got. And I've seen a lot of kids. I mean, now there's a lot of talk about burnout for kids, and giving them so many amount of time. But I'd imagine that play wasn't around.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And I think when you touched on burnout now, I think with the academy system, they have the players in so often. I don't think it's actual physical burnout. I think it's mental burnout, because unfortunately when you're in an academy, then you're away over all the opportunities to play for your Saturday team or your Sunday team, and then you're restricted with your school team. So your focus is on, let's use Bolton Wanderers as an example. You are focused to play for Bolton Wanderers, and I think then you lose the social side of it for the boys, going to school and playing with the mates or playing on a Saturday or Sunday for them. And those boys are then focused on playing for Bolton Wanderers or Blackburn Rovers, whoever it may be, and they don't see the bigger picture. They only see that tunnel. So when it comes to 16 and they're not good enough and they get released, they have then relinquished all that opportunity when they're younger to have that social side of it. And for me, there's a big thing. I'm a believer, if you're going to be a footballer, you'll be a footballer. Now, the way you get to become a footballer, yes, you can have all these technical aspects of it, but I think you've got to be kids as well. You've got to allow them to grow up. And unfortunately, with the academy systems now, there's some fantastic opportunities for kids, but I think it's too regimented, where it's you play for your club and everything else you discard and you leave it, and you only come back to it when you've been released or you go on to do something else. And it's a fine line, but I just believe a couple of days a week training with the academy, let them play for the teams, let them be kids and let them enjoy it and see if they can come through. It happened for me, happened for lots of players in the past. And I'm not saying players are probably fitter and more athletic than they are when I played, but the actual ability wise, I don't think there's any difference.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it myself, being in coaching for quite a few years, and fortunately, my son had opportunities to play in academies, and the team I coached was a very good team that, as a grassroots team, we was going in to play sort of like the pre-academies at under 7s, under 8s, and that was kind of the level that we played at. But my son was in at Manchester United for a couple of years, and as much as it's at that time, I saw it as free training.
Yeah,
it's free training.
Yeah,
and just get everything you can get out of it. Learn from really good coaches that have done all the qualifications, who are really grafting to make themselves a better coach. But some of my boys are still in academies now, and which is absolutely fantastic. And I won't wish it any other way. But you do see them. Sometimes I don't think they're always 100% happy in themselves. I think that there is an ultimate pressure on the shoulders where sometimes I think they just miss having a kickabout on the park and playing for the local grassroots team with the friends.
Yeah, and I'm just touching on that with the likes of Manchester United and that. The parents then see their children going and they throw themselves into it as well. And I think it takes a bigger parent to be able to step back and, like you just said, and say, it's free training. Don't put any pressure on them. There's enough pressure on the kids themselves because of the club that they're at, being at Manchester United, and then they see the kids see the quick fix, thinking, I'm going to play for Man United, and it's really not like that. And I just think that they need to take a backward step, these parents and children, and think, you know what, go for a couple of days a week, bring them out, go and play for your other teams, and then come back, rather than it be 100% committed to that club and go down that channel thinking, I'm going to be a footballer, and then when you come to 16, they drop you from a great height if you don't make that grade. And I believe they've missed out on all those fundamentals of growing up and experiencing playing on poor pitches or playing with the mates and doing something that doesn't mean they have to concentrate and be judged on, and just be children and be kids and enjoy it. And I just think it's too regimented, I really do. And I've seen it firsthand in academy football. And then unfortunately I've been a coach where I've had to say to 16-year-olds, unfortunately you're not being taken on because you haven't reached that grade. And it's tough and it's hard and it's a learning curve for the kids, but I don't think they all have to go through that. I really don't.
Yeah, do you think there should be... I understand that. I know the reasons why academies... I mean, I've seen 4 or 5-year-olds in these kind of pre-academy environments and things like that. And at that moment, they can go on and play grassroots up until under-9s, but I think when under-9s, they sign papers to sign for academy football. Do you think that it should be... You can be within an academy setting, but that doesn't allow you to stop playing grassroots football to maybe... I don't know whether that's under 12s, 13s, under 14s.
I think it's ideal, Martin, I really do, to do it that way. But clubs are very selfish. If they see a glimmer of a lad thinking, gosh, he's got potential, let's keep him. Don't let him out to the other people because he might be something that we're looking for. But 9 times out of 10, that player isn't what they're looking for, and they get thrown on the scrap heap. And it's so difficult for them. And I just think they need to be allowed to play as kids. Go and enjoy it. And another thing for me as well is when I played, and many of my mates who've played, we didn't get coached at that age. We got told to go and play. You gravitate to a position that you maybe like. Yes, there's a bit of structure in the team, but go and play. Go and play as a right back or as a centre half or as a centre forward or as a goalkeeper or as a midfield player. Experiment. Rotate your players and let them play anywhere. And eventually they'll gravitate to where they want to play. And then as they get a little bit older, then you maybe put some structure into them. But let them play. I think they become too regimented. And again, through the academy systems, don't get me wrong, the academy systems are great because they give kids opportunity. But I just think within the academy, they play to a system where the philosophy of the football club or the first team is they may play with 5 at the back or 3 at the back or wing backs or a diamond formation or a 4-4-2. Our first team manager plays that, so we will ripple that effect down to the kids. So they don't know any different. So if they do get let go and they go to another football club, they don't know how to play in that system, and then it becomes a bit alien to them. Yes, 1 or 2 will then pick it up quickly and grasp what the new club wants them to do, but many of them think, gosh, and then they fail again, and then the clubs think, oh, well, he's not good enough because he can't play to another system. And I think you've got to have that blend and that mix to allow them to do all different types of different scenarios, and that's why I'm a great believer, is they don't really need structural training until they get a little bit older. Let them play.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's a topic that we could probably spend at least an hour on because something I'm interested in. But let's go back to, obviously...
We can do that for another time, Martin, can't
we? The episode 2, 3, 4 and 5. Take us back then to when you was 14. You've got this guy from Blackburn hands you a piece of paper, sign this paper for 2 years. Obviously, you say you was probably a little bit naive in that moment, but just talk us through that next 2 years. What did that entail?
It became a little bit more intense, but still nothing like what the academy system was. And when your school holidays were on, you'd get invited to go in for a couple of days during the week. And it wouldn't be an all-day thing. You'd be in for a couple of hours on, say, a Tuesday or Wednesday morning, and then you'd be back in on a Thursday night. So it was only 2 or 3 times maximum during the school holidays. And then again, it was done on a monthly basis, and then you'd play for the Blackburn Rovers under 14s or 15s on a Saturday or a Sunday, depending on when they got the game. But then I was allowed to then play and just go back to normal life. So there was no pressure put on me whatsoever, even though you were representing Blackburn Rovers. Gosh, I was tiny. I really was tiny. My biggest concern when I went to Blackburn Rovers and played in the under 14s was that the shorts were too big for me. And I remember the first game, I remember tying them up and thinking they're going to fall down. because I had no waist on me. I was tiny, but some of the boys were mature. So the kits that they had were from probably their under-16s, Blackburn Rovers, passed down for us to wear. And they absolutely drowned me. My biggest concern was, I can't run around with these shorts on. So I had to take a belt and put a belt on and tie it as tight as I possibly could just to feel comfortable in the kit. But it was only once a month, so it was an experience. And the staff were good. A lad called Alan Spavin was a coach there. Fred O'Donoghue used to come down and overlook it. Bernard Snake, the scout, had come and have a look what was happening. And it was just a gradual progression until you got to 16. And when you got to 16, you were always looking over your shoulder thinking, am I going to get an apprenticeship then? And because I've been there on a regular basis, I didn't presume, I just thought, well, they must like me. And there wasn't, as they are now, where there's 10, 15, 20 players. There was a group of probably 10 maximum who they were going to choose 5 or 6 apprentices out of. So unfortunately, when I got to 16, I wasn't one of those 6 who they took, and I was released. And it was a gradual process going through it, and then playing, and then it wasn't just bang, we're getting rid of you. It was Bernard and Fred were very good at explaining, you need to do this a bit better, or you need to do that. So you got an inclination of, well, if I don't reach that target, then I won't be kept on. And I was released at 16. Was I upset? I probably wasn't, because I was still young and naive and still thought, well, if I don't make it here, the opportunity might not be for me in football, and I'll go and do something else. And it's strange how, from leaving Blackburn Rovers at 16, how it developed in the next few months, where I thought I was going to be completely out of football and think about doing something else.
I mean, obviously you touched on about going through the schooling system and play not being quite as academic as you'd play would have liked. Looking back now, you play go, I wish I was better at learning and studying. I mean, as it turned out, you've had a great football career. So and obviously you've gone into business, which we'll touch on later. But at that moment when you're 16, when you get released, obviously you're still a little bit naive. What are you thinking about what you've fallen back on? I know we touched on what did you want to do, but at that point there was nothing that you really wanted to do at that moment. So
no. Well, to answer that, Martin, when you have your careers interview at school, we had the careers teachers come in on a regular basis when you were 15, and then every month you'd probably speak to them and they'd give you different ideas and maybe workshops for you. I was always interested in the agricultural side of it, being outdoors, working on because I used to work on a farm. I used to work on a farm in Horton called Bretherton's, and I used to deliver milk. I used to milk the cows, I'd do the hens and get the eggs, and I loved the outdoor life. So and they even taught me how to drive a tractor when I was 13, 14 years of age. So I was out doing the muck spreading on the fields and everything. And I loved the individuality of it, of being out in the fields, working on the land, coming back, kitting bottles of milk, they called it, and taking it out on the road and delivering it. And I loved the agricultural side of it. So when the careers teachers spoke to me and they said, you're never going to be a footballer, David, what are you going to do? I always said, well, I'll go into agriculture. I'll work on a farm. And so I always had something in my mind when I was getting to 14, 15, that if football didn't work out, I will go and work on the farms, because Bretherton's at the time wanted me to go as many days as I possibly could. And I didn't get paid for it, but my mum used to get fruit and veg and milk off them as a reward for me, and I used to give it to my mum. So I think I'd have gone down that route. But eventually it took a funny turn when I got to 16 and I left home and I went to live in Cornwall with my mate, whose parents used to go to Cornwall every year for the holidays. And they had some friends in Cornwall who just opened a fruit and veg business in St Ives, and they needed somebody to rent their flat above it to get a bit of income back. And me and my best mate at the time, Simon Duckworth, said, come on, let's go down and we'll work on the beaches for a couple of months. And that's why I went and did, as soon as I left school.
I mean, St Ives is a lovely place, isn't it? And I suppose at 16, moving away from home, some people, that experience of moving from home isn't for everybody, but, a lot of kids, they keep saying, I'm going to leave home, I'm going to go. So you've gone down there.
Yeah.
Did you obviously couldn't drive at that time?
No.
Coach, train down.
We got a bus from Chorley bus station, from Preston bus station, and it took us to Birmingham, and then from Birmingham it took us to Bristol, and then from Bristol it took us down into Cornwall. So it was like three buses. I think it was a 10 or 11 hour trip, and we got down there. We just had a rucksack each, a few clothes in it, some trainers, t-shirts, and then when we got down there, Simon's mum and dad had got us ready to be introduced to the couple who had this shop, and they literally said, yeah, your rent's, I think it was £9 or £10 a week. Your room's upstairs. You've got to provide your own food. You can use the facilities, have a shower or whatever. 2 beds in a twin room, and then from there we walked down to Porthmeor Beach. Got introduced to the manager who ran the cafes and the deck chairs and the trampolines, and they said, right, David and Simon, yeah, we're here for a job. Yeah, okay, right, you start tomorrow morning, you're here at 6 o'clock in the morning. And from that day we were working.
How much was they paying you then? You remember?
Gosh, probably £2 an hour, something like that. Yeah.
Which I suppose. So how many hours did you have to work on the beach each morning then?
We used to have to do it alternately. So one of us had to be up at 6 o'clock, and you had to be down at the cafe on the beach with a spade at 6 o'clock, and your first job was to bury all the seaweed that had come up onto the sand. So Porthmeor, for those people who listen to this who've been on Porthmeor Beach, it's quite a long beach, but you had to start at one end and dig a trench, and if there was seaweed you had to shovel it in and then put the sand over the top of it, so it had to be clean for when the punters came in. But they had other staff members there, so they didn't need us both at 6 o'clock, so it was on a rotational basis. One started at 6 and one started at 8 on alternate mornings, so one of us was up every morning, and then we'd work until the last paying public would leave the beach at sometimes 7-8 o'clock at night. We were putting the deck chairs out, setting the trampolines up, manning the trampolines, working in the cafe, serving chips and hot dogs and things like that, ice creams, Mars bars, Twixes, whatever, to the general public, and that's what we did all day.
So a bit like a jack of all trades, isn't it?
Beach bums. We were classed as beach bums, but we were working, and we absolutely loved it. And you didn't get a day off. You did it 7 days a week.
But I suppose you don't have a day off, and it's probably a little bit of a graft. I mean, digging a trench all the way down the beach.
Yeah.
Even if the beach is only 100 metres, that's still...
It's a lot of sand to be moved, yeah, and it's heavy when it's wet as well.
It is. Yeah. But you've gone down 16, you're working on a beach, so life's good anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you got women on there, you've got everything you want.
Honestly, it was a brilliant way. It was an introduction to real life and having to work for a living. But the cafe staff were brilliant because you could go down, you had to provide your own breakfast, but at lunchtime they'd feed you, at tea time they'd feed you. So you were getting fed, you were getting paid for it, and you were working with the public in the public domain and meeting people and doing things for people. And when they'd finished with the deck chairs, we had to go on and fold them up and bring them back and stack them and make sure the young kids on the trampolines were fine. And it was responsibility, but it was thrown at, but it gave you a fantastic work ethic. And then you were working, like I said, if you're working from 6 in the morning, you were working till 6 and 7, you're doing 12, 13 hours, but never thought anything of it. And then when you finish work, you'd go home, you'd have a shower, you'd get changed, and you'd go out and find something to eat and meet people who'd met on the beach and just have a fantastic social life. But I only did it for a couple of months, maybe 3 months maximum, because obviously then I got the call from Martin Dobson. But what a work experience that was. It was brilliant.
It's a good work experience, and I suppose like anything in life, even those little things that it was only 2 or 3 months shapes you to who you are. Now it's all part of that life experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, say Martin Dobson.
Yes. Again, being 16 years of age, no mobile phones or anything. But we did have a contact number from the people who owned the shop. So I remember just being in my room one night and the owner came and knocked on the door and said, "David, your mum's on the phone." I said, "What does she want?" "Oh, well, you'll have to ring her back." So I went downstairs. He says, "Have you got 10p?" I went, yeah. He said, for the phone call. So I had to pay for the phone call. So I gave him 10p and I rang my mum and she said, oh, David, Martin Dobson's been on the phone from Bury, wants to come back for a trial. I said, Mum, I've only just come down here, like it's 11-hour journey, it's cost me 12 quid or whatever to come down. I'm not so sure. She said, well, it's up to you. You need to ring me back by tomorrow and let me know whether you're going to come back. So I said, all right, thanks, Mum. Put the phone down, went back upstairs, see my mate, and he said, what does she want? I said, oh, someone called Martin Dobson at Bury wants me to go back for a trial. What do you reckon? And he went, when are you going? Oh, I don't know whether to go. He's saying, you've got to go. So I wasn't really convinced. And I think maybe because I've been let go from Blackburn Rovers, I probably thought, was my confidence a little bit down? Was it worth going all that way back? And he said, no, I think you should go. So I left it till the day after. I rang my mum and said, after I give him another 10p for the phone call, and I said, yeah, Mum, I'll come back up. When is it? She said, it's on such a date. You need to be back up here the day before, and then you can get there the following day. So I said, right, I'll book a bus, a coach or whatever. So I had to do the reverse journey then from Cornwall to Bristol to Birmingham, then from Birmingham back up to Preston, and my mum picked me up from the bus station. And then the following day, I went to Gig Lane and I had a trial. I don't know if you know the story, or people who listen may have heard it before in other podcasts, but I only played between 4 and 6 minutes of the game down at Gig Lane, and it was 11v11, all set up, kits on. We walked down from Gig Lane to Lower Gig where we played the game. We got it all structured and properly. David Lee, you play there on the right wing, and I think a maximum of 6 minutes. And I remember, like, Steve Walsh, who was the coach, who was one of the scouts there. He went, David, waved his hand and took to the side, and they put a sub on. I thought, oh, gosh, I said, I didn't do much wrong. I only touched the ball a couple of times and a couple of little runs and that. I thought, that's strange. I thought nothing of it. I thought, what a waste of time that was. So anyway, I didn't sulk about it. I watched the rest. They played 30 minutes and obviously changed the teams over, but I didn't get back on. So I was, at the end of the game, Martin and Walsh got us all together and said, right, thanks for coming, make your way back up to from Lower Gig to Gig Lane, get yourself changed, and thanks very much. Thought nothing of it, went back up, talked to one or two of the lads on the way up, got changed, and in Bury Football Club there's a long corridor between the dressing rooms and the exit, and I got changed and I was walking up the corridor, and Steve Walsh said to me, he said, the manager just wants to thank you for coming up, or for coming to the trial. So he said his office is through there. So I went through this white door and I knocked on the door, and he said, come in. So I walked in. He went, hi David, come on, sit down. I said, hiya, Mr. Dobson. He said, sit down. He said, right. He said, I'm going to offer you an apprenticeship. I'm thinking, quite surreal this. And I said, well, Mr. Dobson only played 6 minutes. He said, soon enough. Like that, I'm thinking, wow. But looking back on it, it was the first year of the YTS, and I think more than the actual technical ability of myself, I think he liked my attitude, because I'd made the effort to go all the way up and play 6 minutes and then come off and not moan about it. And they'd obviously seen me play prior to that, because Steve Walsh was the Lancashire Schoolboys manager. So I'd played for him a couple of times. So he'd obviously seen what I could do. But I think more than anything, it was the attitude. And I think that's always stood me in good stead. And I always say to anybody now, if you've got a good attitude in life and your graft and determination, you can achieve what you want to achieve. And that's always been my philosophy. So from being fortunate to get 6 minutes of a game, and I think I got through because of the attitude, it stood me in good stead.
Yeah, we've touched on it earlier on, didn't we, about having that hard work ethic and just being a good person can go a long way in life, not just in football, but anything in general. So, I mean, obviously, those few touches that you had on the pitch must have been some unbelievable touches.
Yeah, I can't. It's such a long time ago, but and obviously I must have made an impression.
Yeah.
And I thank Ray Pointer, Frank Casper, Martin Dobson, Steve Walsh for that opportunity of getting in at Bury Football Club.
So Martin Dobson he just brought you in after 6 minutes of the game and said, we're going to offer you an apprenticeship. And so what was the next stages to that then? Because obviously you just come back up from Cornwall.
Yeah.
You've got a job down there.
Yeah.
A little bit of a life, you're there with your friend and, spending the summer down there. And now you've just been offered this new opportunity back into something that you always wanted to do.
Yeah. Well, I think the apprenticeship for the football club, it was literally lastminute.com for them. So pre-season usually starts in the first week in July. So this must have been probably maybe the second, third week of June, something like that, where they're obviously ready to come back in. So I said, they offered it, man. I said, yeah, couldn't wait to sign, do you know what I mean? So I didn't look at any terms and conditions. And they said, right, sign it. We'll see you on the 1st of July or the 2nd of July it was. So then I went home. I got on the bus from Preston down to Birmingham, to Bristol, to St Ives. And I said to my mate, I said, I've got an apprenticeship. He went, oh, fantastic. So I said, I've got to go. So I only stayed down there another maybe 3 or 4 days, spoke to the people who I worked for, and they were really pleased for me, and packed my bags and came home.
Wow. I mean, it's going from, going down, having this new summer to within sort of a short space of time, everything changing a full circle. Again, you've gone from being told thanks but no thanks at Blackburn Rovers, going down to there to only being there for a short period of time, to go to this trial for 6 minutes, come back, and everything's changed again. So 1st of July, 2nd July is when you have to go back. How was that feeling turning up on that first day?
Well, I got told off when I first went, the first day I went in, because I had a West Ham t-shirt on, because I'd never any money as a kid. And I remember, I think I was 15 and I was still at school at St Michael's in Chorley, and there was a sports shop. And me and my mates, sometimes at school lunchtime, you weren't meant to go out at lunchtime, but we used to walk into Chorley town centre, maybe get a bag of chips or something for our dinner rather than stay in the school canteen. And I walked past this sports shop and I saw this West Ham football shirt, the kit, the shorts and the socks. I thought, God, that looks fantastic, that. So I saved up and I actually went and bought it. So I used to wear it when I was down in Cornwall, and I absolutely loved it. It was like a silky, satiny type one. And when my first day at Bury, I didn't know what to wear, so I just put a football t-shirt on, and I walked in. I remember someone said to me, what have you got that on for? You're representing Bury Football Club now. So I actually took it off, and that was my first introduction to Bury Football Club. But no, it was my pride and joy, that shirt. But yeah, that was my first day, and we got kitted out with training kit and told him what your job. You didn't just go on train and play football. The first thing they said to you is, right, these are going to be your jobs. These are your pros you're going to look after. Go and introduce yourself to the pros. Then get yourself in there and make sure all the kits and everything's ready for the players. Never even thought about the training side of it. It was only once we'd sorted everything out for the pros. But prior to that, we were out painting the terracing and doing the walls down the sides of the pitches and making sure everything was right for the start of pre-season. So football wasn't even on the agenda for the first few days. As an apprentice, you had all the mundane jobs to do before you'd even step foot on the training ground.
Are you thinking at that moment, because all you're thinking is football, it's a football club.
Yeah.
At that moment, you've got a brush in your hand.
Yeah.
Painting the terraces. You thinking, is there a moment where you think, what am I doing here?
I don't know. I think that, again, at 16, I was very naive. If I got told to do something, I would do it. But I just knew I'd got an opportunity and I wasn't going to let it go before me and mess it up. And over the pre-season, you start building the camaraderie with your new teammates and the club and the staff. And I loved it from the first minute, but I had that discipline of, if I was going to do a job, I was going to do it properly. And I had that discipline from working on the farm and collecting eggs and delivering milk and looking after cattle and cleaning tractors, and it had to be done right. And then the farmers would then pull you up on it, say that needs cleaning, that needs an extra pint delivering to that property. So you had some form of structure, and I loved that. So going into the football side of it, someone telling you what to do and instructing you to do it and just going to do it, it was a great format. It was a good... It was an education in itself to have a proper apprenticeship, cleaning the players' boots and having pride in making sure that the boots were clean and polished and ready for them and presented to the player before they went out for training. So I loved the discipline side of it. And when you talk about being in the forces and things like that, I think I'd have been great in the forces as well, because I was such a disciplined person, and if I had to do something, I carried it out to the best of my ability, and that stood me in good stead throughout my life and even what I'm up to now.
Discipline's a massive thing, isn't it? I think, like as we touched on before, about the forces, I think it's something that everybody should experience in some aspect, even if it's just a year or 2 years. It teaches you a lot about
I'm a great
self-motivation,
Martin,
discipline, because a lot of people these days they can't grasp of somebody be above them telling them what to do, and they don't like it. It's great. A lot of people who don't like that go into self-employment and they make something really good of themselves. But it's, and I suppose in an apprenticeship, times have changed now. I get the feeling, not been around it, but I don't think the apprentice type way is painting terraces these days. But do they still like polished boots? I'm a little naive on this subject.
To be honest, Martin, when I was the youth team coach and the under-23s coach at Bolton, the players, when I was in charge of the apprentices for the under-18s for 4 or 5 years, however long it was, it got to a stage where the PFA was starting to get involved to say the players don't clean the boots. And I've always been one for the discipline, and I thought it didn't do me any harm. And to be fair, myself and Tony Kelly, who used to do the youth team together, we made the players clean the boots up to the day I finished as an under-18s coach, and it just did not do them players any harm whatsoever. And it was a little bit of structured discipline that I thrived on, and those apprentices thrived on as well. And it wasn't just to make them a better footballer, because it didn't. It made them a more disciplined person for when they actually come out of football into the real world and realise what life and work is all about. So I think to instill that discipline into players or to people in general, and I'm a great believer that 16-year-olds should go and do 6 weeks in the national service or some type of discipline to make them wake up to the real world and what life is about. None of this woke society. I think go back to basics, get some discipline, and it'll stand them in good stead in the future lives. I'm a great believer in it. Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. So, was the apprentice for, is it 2 or 3 years? Or it was called the YTS scheme, and It was classed for 2 years. In the start of my second year, I was a November birthday, so as soon as you turn 17, you could become a professional player. And when I turned 17, I was offered a professional contract. Again, fantastic management from Martin Dobson and Frank Casper and Ray Pointer. Even though I signed as a pro at 17, I still finished my YTS. I still cleaned the players' boots. I still got changed with the apprentices, even though I was touching on the first team and being involved with the first team on a regular basis. I still had that discipline of being, when the pros went home at lunchtime, while I was picking the kit up, even though I might have trained with them, and cleaning the boots and doing all the jobs before I went home at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So even though I was 17, I never went above my station. Not that I ever would, but Martin Dobson and Frank and Ray made sure that I didn't. And I think it was a fantastic grounding for me, because I could have easily gone the other way. I wouldn't have done, but I suppose that's thanking my parents and the life I grew up as being a disciplined lad, where you're never better than anybody else, and you keep on that level playing field. I was still an apprentice, even though I was a pro for the next 6 or 7 months until 18 I became a pro. But even when I was a pro, I always looked after my own boots. I did have apprentices, but I made sure I looked after my own boots. It's just one of those things.
sometimes it's worth doing the job yourself, because it's not like you don't think that they're going to do a good job. It's just you might have a different level of standards.
But I just thought, Martin, why should somebody clean my boots? Do you know what I mean? That's my job. They're my tools. You wouldn't have an apprentice bricklayer and doing somebody else's trowel and whatever and cleaning it and whatever. You'd look after your own equipment, don't you? And again, going back to when you were in the forces and you were disciplined and you looked after your own stuff, didn't you? So it's no different to being a footballer. My kit, when you finish training, I wouldn't leave it on the floor. I'd put it in the correct boxes or kit boxes where it needed to be washed. Didn't leave it on the floor, and made sure my boots were clean and ready for the next day. It's self-discipline, and I've done that all the way through my life.
Yeah, I would say it's something everybody should have. In any job that you do, it's definitely one of the key attributes that everybody should have. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
So you turn 18 and now you become this sort of a full professional. What was that feeling? Was that a feeling of joy, and kind of obviously going through the things that you're going through? Blackburn, to that kind of rejection, to getting this opportunity at Bury. So making that first team, making the first team as a professional as 18. Are you thinking everything's starting to fall into place?
Yeah, it was starting to fall into place. And again, going back to the management team there, they were brilliant of not overloading you with it, as in not training too much at first team level, because you're still young and you're naive and you're small and you need to mature. So Martin Dobson, even though I was involved on a regular basis with the first team, it sometimes dipped me in and dipped me out, and maybe train with the under 18s, because they didn't have a reserve team then. It was first team squad and the under 18s apprentices. So sometimes I'd train, if it was a big physical day and it was lots of running and that, he'd probably dip me into that a little bit of it, and they say, right, go and have a five-a-side with the 18s. They were fantastic at making sure, the management side of it, that the workload wasn't too much for you. So I was dipped in, dipped out, and then eventually, but I think probably 3 or 4 months into the season of being 18, I was then training on the first team basis on a regular basis, and then stayed with them. But it was great management how they actually got me through to that, because I never picked up any injuries or anything like that. I was quite lucky, and I think that's because of the way they treated me. Because when you're 18, I was still tiny. I think it was only when I was 16, I was 9 stone 2, something like that. And then if you're playing against pros, even at 18, I was probably 9.5 stone, 10 stone maximum. Playing against pros they just need to tap me and it'd fall over. So the physical side of it was difficult, but because I was fit and nimble and I had the agility, I could obviously ride the tackles. So it stood me in good stead, and then you just go with the flow then when you're playing regular first team football. And once you've had a taste of it, playing in front of crowds and having a bit of success, and you just think, gosh, I want a bit more than that. But you didn't ever sit back. You just think, I want to push on a bit more. And the more mature I got and the more games I got under my belt, the more confident I became. And yeah, you start playing on a regular basis, and people started watching me, which I ended up going to Southampton, but I didn't think, there was any rumours. I didn't even think to play. I think, oh gosh, another club's watching me, I might progress. I loved it at Bury. And in a funny type of way, I was quite happy to stay there. Even though I was ambitious, I didn't know anything else. I only knew Bury, so I was quite happy playing there for them.
So how long was you at Bury for then, in total?
From the age of 16 to the age of 22, I think I was, something like that.
Good period of time, isn't
yeah,
it?
6 or 7 years, yeah.
And what division was they playing in at the time?
I think it was Division 2 at the time, yeah.
So is that
the
League One?
The old third division, yeah, like League One, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, which is still it's an incredible standard.
Yeah, it was a decent standard, because, I mean, we had a couple of decent cup runs. I remember playing against Everton in the FA Cup, and we beat Everton 1-0, and I scored, and I think that put me in, it got a bit of television, a bit of coverage in the news, and I think it started putting me people started to think, oh, he might have the potential to move on, and then just after that, that's when I moved on. And it's all been in the right place at the right time, and obviously I'd done well in the Everton game and a few other games that we played at Gig Lane, and people obviously looked at me and thought, yeah, take a chance on me and move on.
It's about, taking that opportunity, and there'd be certain games throughout the season where you just know that there's going to be eyes on that game for a particular reason, and having a good game or in a bad game can make or break sometimes.
It can be a defining factor, Martin. It really can. And like we talked earlier, it's being in the right place at the right time, performing at the right time in the right place, and the right people being in that place at that moment. It's everything fitting into that perfect situation, and sometimes you get that little bit of luck along the way.
So 22, 23, before did you then go to Southampton?
Yes.
So before that moment, what was the build up to that last season you was at Bury? Did you have any ambition to? I'm sure you had the ambition. Probably worded it incorrectly. Did you know that there might be an opportunity to go to a higher level, or were you just literally playing each game as it comes and just seeing where the journey takes you?
I was playing every game and enjoying it, and it was only people saying, "Oh, you won't be here long," or "Such a body's watching you," or. I remember Wilf McGuinness at the time, who was the physio at Bury, came to me and went, "What are you?" And I went, "Well, what do you mean, what are you?" He went, "Are you Catholic or Protestant?" I went, "Well, I went to Church of England school, but I'm not religious anyway." He went, "All right," he said, "Yeah, it's all right because I know Rangers have been watching you," like that. But it didn't mean anything to me. I was only 18 years of age, do you know what I mean? He said, "Oh, Rangers have been watching you." Oh, all right, and I didn't think anything of it, and that's when people started talking about me.
Yeah.
And then it came out of the blue from Sat. I only found out a couple of days before that. I can't remember whether it was one of the players or the management said, keep doing well, so people are watching you. And then I just played in one game. I can't remember. It might have been Southend at home. I can't remember. And then after the game, Sam Ellis said, we've had a call from Southampton. They wanted to go down and speak to them. I didn't think, I was quite naive. I said, right. He said, when do I need to go? He went, tomorrow. So on a Sunday I had to drive down to Southampton, and then met Ian Bramfoot. Met him on the Sunday. He said, put me up in a hotel, we'll pick you up on Monday morning, bring you to the ground, discuss terms and whatever. I had no agent or anything like that, just completely off the cuff. So I went in on the Monday morning, spoke to Ian Bramfoot, showed me around the stadium, offered me a contract. Do you want to sign? I said, yeah, I'll sign it. And it was literally, sign it, go home, get your stuff and come back down, and that was it, playing for Southampton. Just within 24 hours. Wow. Amazing.
I suppose...
I think I'd have had time to think about it, Martin. I probably wouldn't have signed it because I was thinking, it's strange, it's alien to me. I've never been out of the Northwest apart from playing football. Thinking, gosh, it's totally different. And it was only when I spoke to my mates come back and they went, oh gosh, Matt Le Tissier is there, Alan Shearer is there and all that. I'm thinking Neil Ruddock, and I'm thinking, gosh, I didn't even think about them, but they say, oh, you'll love it, blah, blah, blah. So I signed, yeah.
Just them three alone, they went on to have some unbelievable careers, didn't they?
They did,
You know, I mean, Ruddock's quite a large and life character, isn't he? And he's quite a, I suppose to some people, quite a fearsome character, isn't he?
He was one on the pitch. Yeah, he was.
Yeah. And what was he actually like? So obviously you've gone down. Let's paint the picture a little bit. Yeah. So you've gone down to Southampton. Mm-hmm. What are you feeling going into that changing room for the first time, seeing all the senior players? Yeah,
it was quite daunting. But remember, when I was at Bury, I played with some fantastic players. You've got Leighton James, you've got Trevor Ross, you've got Alan Taylor, you've got Sammy McElroy, Kenny Clements, people who've been international. Noel Brotherston was there, international players, which they were fantastic players. So yeah, I'd come across pros who I looked up to. But then going to Southampton, I went in again a little bit naive, and then realised, gosh, they got Tim Flowers, they had Ian Dowie, they had Alan Shearer, they had Matt Le Tissier, they had Glenn Cockrell, Terry Hurlock, amongst Mickey Adams, Russell Osman, Barry Horn. Gosh, some legendary footballers down in that neck of the woods, and internationally as well. So I found the transition quite hard going into that dressing room and living that type of cultured life that they live, because I used to play for Bury and then train and then go home and just go back to normal life. But it was a totally different type of life down there, because they were like superstars down there. And did I fit in? I suppose I had to try and make my mark on the team before I could have any acceptance from them, which was difficult. And again, I've said it in other podcasts, I went down there because Ian Branfoot wanted me to replace Matt Le Tissier. Well, Matt Le Tissier was the god down there, was, is, still will be forever. So I think Matt and Ian Branfoot had a bit of a fallout, and Ian Branfoot didn't want Matt around the club, and he tried to sell him to Chelsea and whatever, and Matt wasn't having any of it, and he didn't want to go. So I suppose knowing that, and I got on really well with Matt. He was so down to earth, fantastic footballer. I really looked up to him, but he was such a placid, nice man. And he wasn't bothered whether Ian Branfoot was there or not. He just wanted to play football, all the politics side of it. And he probably knew that I was trying to gun for his place. And yes, I did take him out of the team on a number of occasions. I played 24 games before the crowd really got on Ian Branfoot's back and Matthew was back in the team. So it was tough. And then once I'd come out of the team, I knew then I was never really going to get back in while Matthew was there, because he was class every week. He did nothing in the game for 89 minutes and do a bit of skill and magic, bang, he'd score a goal, and he was the hero. But that's how he was. He was a fantastic footballer. So I was never on the same level as him, even though I was playing in the same team, or I thought I wasn't on the same level as him. Obviously I was, as in being in the team, but to achieve what he could do, I could never do what he did. So then obviously I was out the team, and then I was playing again in the reserves, and I played in a reserve team game. And as we spoke about earlier, it's having been in the right place at the right time, and other people being there at the time when you're having a good time. And I played in a reserve game against, I think it was QPR, at Rochdale, which is the training ground down at Southampton. Played really well, worked hard, and scored a worldie with my left foot that I don't usually often do. And then the following morning, I realised that Bruce Rioch was down at the game, and then they asked me to come back up to Bolton on the loan deal, because Bruce was in the process of building a new team and a new squad, and saw me as part of that squad, and I went up on loan because I wasn't playing at Southampton.
And obviously it's a move back up to the northwest, because obviously you had the concern initially going, like, had you had time to think about going to Southampton?
Probably wouldn't have signed,
Probably wouldn't have signed
because I was out of my comfort zone.
So I suppose it's going back into your comfort zone, but you've now adapted. You've learned how to be out your comfort zone because you've spent the time down at Southampton. So so you go up on loan to Bolton. So in that loan period, because obviously you make that a permanent transition, don't you?
Yes, yeah. I went up initially for a month. I didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously, I spoke to Ian Branfoot, and he said, "Yeah, go up, and if you want to go, you can go. I'm not stopping you." Fine. So initially, I went up for a month, and the manager then, Bruce Rioch, put me in the team, and obviously, I made an impact in the team, not just as an individual, but the group of players seemed to gel. And Bruce was really building something, and within that month I'd obviously made an impression. And then we drew Liverpool in the FA Cup. Now, in this day and age, most clubs wouldn't allow you then, if you were just on loan, to play in the FA Cup. So I didn't do anything about it, but obviously the football club had been in contact with Southampton, and they said, yes, you can play in the game, which was great. And then they said you could play in the FA Cup, and we drew Liverpool. So we played Liverpool at Burndon, did okay, we got a draw out of it, and then obviously the revenue that they got from the game at Anfield, it really ticked that final box for the club then to be able to afford the transfer fee to pay for Southampton, because, listen, I think they paid 350 grand for me. So they wanted some money back, and obviously Bolton being in the position they were, didn't have that financial backing to be able to buy me. And I think it was a borderline stage where I could have probably ended up going back to Southampton if we hadn't have drawn Liverpool in the FA Cup. But the revenue that it created allowed the club then to buy me, and that's why I ended up signing.
We spoke about right place, right time, and you mentioned you're not really like a religious person, you know, neither side, and same for me. But one thing I do try and think back to is things happen for a reason. So that draw that they got against Liverpool and then taking the replay to, I presume, at Anfield,
yeah.
And that revenue that it brought in allowed you to make that permanent move, which then was a catapult for your career wasn't it? So obviously you made an impression on that loan period. And how many years did you spend at Bolton then?
As a player, 5 seasons, 5 years, yeah.
And you know, I've mentioned before that, you know, I used to go and watch Bolton, so very familiar with some of the names. But obviously, just for the people who aren't aware at the time when you was playing, what were the type of players that you was around? What players were there at the time?
Well, the obvious ones were John McGinley, Andy Walker, Alan Thompson, Alan Stubbs, Jason McAteer, Mark Patterson, Tony Kelly, Mark Seagrave, Simon Farnworth, the goalkeeper, Phil Brown, David Burke, Mark Winstanley, and then coming to the latter stages, then you've got people like Fabian De Freitas coming in, Mixu Patalainen, Michael Johansson, Per Franson I mentioned. Some great players, and it was a fantastic time under the management of Bruce Rioch and Colin Todd. It was class. It really was. Because
obviously Bruce Rioch is building that team. He's put you. Obviously, you went on loan. He obviously saw that the team that he wanted to try and build was that he saw a big part of you, part of that team. But then obviously Bruce Rioch goes to Arsenal, doesn't he?
Yes.
So who came in after Bruce Rioch?
Well, Colin Todd was his assistant, and then when Bruce left to go to Arsenal, they had Ray McFarland and Colin Todd, and it was a funny situation that I'd never ever seen in football. They were classed as joint managers. So Colin and Ray were both the managers at the time, and it didn't work. So Ray McFarland left, and then Colin Todd took over on a permanent basis, and then I wasn't Colin's type of player, and it come to a stage where he was starting to create and build his own regime and players, and he brought players in, and I was then becoming on the periphery, and then not squeezed out but forced out because I wasn't his type of player. And then I moved on to Wigan Athletic, and then obviously Colin continued managing at Bolton.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how things, because he had Colin Todd, then was Andy Todd at Bolton at that point?
Andy was a player at Bolton, yes. Yeah.
I suppose, and that's the thing for any player, when one manager goes, you're always thinking, who's coming in? Am I going to be a part of that?
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, things work out the way it does.
It happened to quite a few of those players. I mean, Owen Coyle was there, Scott Green was there. We all eventually moved on, and then obviously Colin took over his own squad.
Which happens in football, doesn't it?
Of course it does. That's part of life, yeah.
And I suppose when your name's above the door for the manager role, you've got to, ultimately the results are down to you, and you've got to mould your team around your philosophy. And
yeah, that's life, and that's football. It happens not just in the football world. If somebody comes in as a manager and sees it in a different light and wants to have a different type of infrastructure, then you've got the reins to be able to do it, so you go and do it. And it's not personal, it's professional. And at the end of the day, Colin came in and had to do his job and did it, and I wasn't part of that, which that's life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in that in that Bolton dressing room, then, I mean, I think I know the answer to this one actually. But who was kind of like the not the class clown, but the guy that would always be like the Joker in that? I've got one or two people in mind.
Go on then, you tell me. I'll tell you.
I know one that stands out for certain. It would be John McGinley, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but he also had a partner, Owen Coyle.
Right. Okay.
They were a nightmare together. Two Scots lads, both loud, both boisterous, but great lads, but they were fantastic for team spirit.
Yeah.
And the banter they used to have, and Coyley was one of them, would never let anything go. He really wouldn't. If he had something on his mind, or he wanted to say something and he wanted an argument, especially when we used to play head tennis and that, and there was a controversial decision, you might as well just give him the point, because he would argue over the slightest thing, even when he thought he was wrong.
Yeah.
And going back to the religious side of it, he used to say, ask God. He'll tell you, God never lies. And they're thinking, Coyley, you're always going to argue, so you can have it. But the camaraderie and the banter between the players and those two were an integral part of it. But you had other characters in there who didn't get involved in it, and you had other characters who would get involved in it. So the blend of it was fantastic. But we knew for a fact, and what Bruce Rioch had done, he'd built that solidity and that character between everybody, where you can't have everybody who's going to be exactly the same in a dressing room. You need different characters, and Coyley, McGinn, Tony Kelly, they're all part of a great group of players who got on within the football environment. We did our own things outside of football, and sometimes socially you didn't get on with other players because it wasn't your cup of tea. It's not that you didn't like them, it just wasn't your social circle. So Bruce Rioch was brilliant at bringing us all together, but you also had differences outside the football club, and you could go and do whatever you wanted. So and that's why we had the success we had.
And I think you could see that. I think at that time when I used to watch him, I think it's like in any team, isn't it? I think having talented players is one thing, and it makes the job slightly easier for a manager, doesn't it? But the manager's job then is to bring all that talent and make it cohesive and make that work together. And part of that, you've got to have the right people with the right mentalities that blend and bounce off each other rather than rebel against each other. So back then, I've listened to quite a few podcasts with different footballers, and back then, things have changed now. But obviously, you don't drink. But back then, did you used to drink? Was it a drinking culture at Bolton, or?
Yeah, I wasn't a drinker, no. But I wouldn't say it was a drinking culture. But when the lads went out, they liked to have a drink, and I think with the players, there was always a balance. They knew when they could have a drink, but they knew if they overstepped the mark, Bruce Rioch would come down on like a ton of bricks. So yes, you had to socialise and relax after games and have nights out and whatever. And players did that, but they knew when they came into training, you had to work hard. And the thing that Bruce Rioch had done, it created that mentality where you worked hard every training session and you worked hard in the games. And I think he ruled by an iron rod, but he had that fear factor in him that you didn't want to let him down. So regardless of whether one or two of the lads had been out and had a drink and at the right times and then come in and trained, if you weren't at it, regardless of who you were, if Bruce Rioch saw that and identified it, he'd come down on you like a ton of bricks. Not necessarily on a vocal side of it. When he pinned the team up on a Friday, you weren't in it, and you just it made the players think, well, I wonder why they're not in it. It's because they've either stepped out of line or they haven't trained to the maximum. And the creative players might be good players, but if they stepped out of line and they didn't do what Bruce asked them to do, you're out of the team. So you knew for a fact you had to live right, but work hard continuously to get your rewards. And he created that culture where we worked our socks off, and once you've had a bit of success, or you've won a league, or you've been to a cup final or something, you want more of it. And that was instilled into every player in that squad that Bruce brought through. So yeah, you could have a good time and the lads would have a drink, but you knew when you had to work.
And that's just buying into what the manager expects and vice versa, isn't it? And that's kind of what makes a successful team, is the players will buy into the manager because they have respect. And I think this day and age, I think that's where, like if you look, one that springs to mind at the moment, say like Erik Ten Hag at United, where he's had to deal with quite a few discipline issues in his tenure so far, where other managers have probably not grasped it, but yet he's got a lot of stick because he's leaving out players like he left out Ronaldo, he's left out Rashford and Sancho, and
totally agree with him. Totally agree.
But from an outsider, from a fan, they're going, "What are you doing? That's our best player." But it's trying to lay down. You don't adhere to the discipline that we're trying to get to here. It doesn't matter who you are, and I'm all for it.
I'm all for it as well,
yeah.
and that's how Bruce Rioch used to work. But you said earlier then about the respect. Every player, whether you're in the team or not, had the respect for the manager. You had your respect for your other players, and you had respect for yourself, and you had levels, and you had to stay to those levels. And if you drop below those levels, you're disrespecting the manager, the other players, yourself, and the manager was great at knowing that you're never always going to play well. But if you work your socks off and give everything you possibly could, which is respect for yourself and everybody else, he would never ask any more of you.
Yeah.
You could take getting beat by a team if they were better than you on the day, but a team would never beat us because we laid down and we didn't have that fight and aggression and wanted to give 100%. And that's what we did all the time. But you're never ever going to play well every game, but you've always got the channels to be able to work your socks off because we were fit.
Yeah.
We could run around and we could run teams into the ground, and that's why I think we had that bit of success.
Fantastic. So we're leaving Bolton behind. We were moving on to Wigan Athletic. So who was the manager at the time that brought you in?
It was John Dean was the manager at Wigan Athletic at the time. His assistant was John Benson, who was like the director of football. John was at Norwich as a coach, and he said he remembers me from playing for Bolton, and we beat Norwich in the Cup 1-0 to get us to the semi-final of the Coca-Cola Cup. And he said, I remember that day you scored a goal. He said, I always remembered you. And he said, you played really well and I'd watch you. And if there was ever an opportunity to come and get you, I will come and get you. Yeah. And he did.
That's what happened.
And then John Dean was the manager, but it was John Benson who brought me in, yeah.
So, and how long was your Wigan Athletic for?
3 seasons at Wigan, yeah. Again, it was a transition from having success and working alongside some great people to go into a completely different environment. And obviously we had Burndon Park, which was a fortress, and then we went to the Wigan Athletics ground, and it was a bit run down, and you had to wash your own kit, and which didn't bother me, but it just didn't have the same effect on me as Bolton Wanderers did. And I had 3 seasons in there, and we had a little bit of success and got to a Zenith Data Cup final, whatever it was. I think it was a windshield.
Oh
Zenith Data was with Southampton, but the windscreens final or something.
Was it like the windscreen repair?
Something like that. But we had a bit of success, and again played some decent players there. I enjoyed it, but it never really ignited to what I had at Bolton Wanderers.
So after that sort of 3 years at Wigan, what age where we are in terms of your age at that point?
Yeah, I was probably 30, 31, something like that. And I finished at Wigan. They didn't renew my contract. And in all honesty, I got an opportunity to go to Rochdale Football Club. I think Steve Parkin was then the manager, and he offered me, I think, a 2 or 3 year contract. And I turned it down because, no disrespect to Steve Parkin or to Rochdale Football Club, but when you played at a really high level and a decent level, I was dropping down 2 or 3 levels to go and play for Rochdale, and it's not the level to drop down to that bothered me. I didn't have the desire for it. I'd lost my hunger and my love of the game of football from a player's perspective, and because I got so many highs in football, the thought of going to Rochdale and playing in front of 2,000 or 3,000 and people criticising you, and I just thought, I don't need that. I don't need it. And I had one eye of thinking of going on, or I was in the process of doing the coaching side. And I remember, to be fair to John Benson, he said, when you finished here as a player, he said, there will be a coaching role for you, which I thought that was fantastic. And he said, just bear with me a little bit. He said, there will be a position coming up for you. What it is, I don't know, but at some stage after your career as a player, there will be a coaching role for you. So I went away on some holiday, come back and still hadn't heard anything. And just out of the blue, John Benson rang me, went, Paul Jewell wants to see you, who's then come in as a manager. And he said, I want you to be youth team coach. I thought, wow, fantastic. So I'm so glad that having the choice between Rochdale and turning it down and having the chance to become a youth team coach at Wigan Athletic, the longevity of the coaching side of it far outweighed the 3 years at Rochdale Football Club where I knew I wouldn't be happy. Yeah, I might have done all right, but who knows? But I maybe have gone on to be a manager or a coach there, I don't know. But the opportunity to go and coach at Wigan Athletic was a lure for me, where I'd done my badges and I was ready to do it, and I thought it was a perfect transition. So I sacrificed 3 years as a player to go on the coaching side of it, but then I got 17 years out of the coaching side of it, rather than go back to square one and having 3 years at Rochdale and not knowing what might happen. So
it's like that. Sometimes talk about right place, right time. That transitional opportunity just came at the right time, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Like you say, you could have had really good 3 years, enjoyed it, trying to squeeze every juice out of that orange, shall we say, of maximising your playing time. But I think, like anything, once you start to question you kind of whether you want something or not, is the time when you've got to take yourself seriously, think, okay, what do I need to do? And that having that coaching opportunity, I mean, at that point, I would imagine you're not thinking completely long term, thinking I'm going to have 17 great years of coaching. You're going, but here's an opportunity that's going to hopefully allow me to do something on the long term. What that brings, I don't know. So going into coaching then, you did. So what badges did you do? I
did all the way up to my UFA licence, which I completed and passed. And I did that with a lad called Colin Greenall, who was then a player at Wigan. We both did our coaching. I'd coached at Bolton in the then Centre of Excellence on a Tuesday and a Thursday night with Martin Dobson and Frank Stapleton were at the club at the time. So I'd got into the coaching side of it as a player. And then when I went to Wigan Athletic, Colin was of the same ilk, thinking he wants to go on the coaching side of it. So we did our B licences together. We went down to Lillishall and did our A licences together and both passed. And I think when managers see that you've actually put the work in to go and do your coaching badges, because you were still playing as pros, but then you were going out on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, being with the team on a Sunday and really doing it the hard way. Because even though he was a footballer, you didn't get any leeway and think, you had to do the graft. And I did it for a few years, and so did Colin. So then that gave me the opportunity to get onto the coaching side of it. Yeah.
So in that, the time you spent as a coach at Wigan then, what pros came out of that you've set up, that you was part of? Or was there anybody that maybe not so much made it, but who was quite a standout player who had quite a bit of talent?
Gosh, it's that many years ago. I can't remember the names, but there were players came through the system at Wigan Athletic. And the perfect example was Leighton Baines. Leighton was an apprentice for me at Wigan Athletic, and I got him through that transitional stage to playing first team football. And I remember having the conversation with Paul Jewell about putting Leighton Baines in the team, because we'd played at the stadium and they were having a bit of a bad time. And I remember Paul being in his office, and he said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, put Baines in, give him a chance. And he's like, I don't know. And he'd trained with him and done really well. And it was obviously Paul's final decision, but he put Leighton Baines in, and obviously Leighton Baines went on then to do a fantastic for Wigan Athletic, got him to the Premier League, and then ended up playing in the Premier League and then going to Everton. So he was a standout one, but there have been other players who've come through the system there.
Yeah, I remember when obviously probably a lot of people forget where he started, and a lot of people just remember him of his Everton days, because that's where he probably spent the majority of his career. But I remember when he was at Wigan, and he was at that time the player that a lot of people were talking about. He was like, came through the academy and just absolutely took his opportunity, it just looked amazing. He was a top player.
But then you've got another lad who's not playing now, lad called Luke Joyce, went on to, he was an apprentice at Wigan, and then Paul Jewell let him go, and I thought it was a banker out of these 6 apprentices or 8 apprentices that was going to get an opportunity, and he let them all. We released them all, and he was the last one to come in the manager's office, and I thought he was going to get a contract, and Paul said no. But then he ended up going to Carlisle as a player there, and that kick-started his career. So he did well under Paul Simpson. Paul Simpson had seen him play at under 21s level at Wigan, took a chance on him, and then Luke went on to make a career. He played at Port Vale, and he had a good career. So there are players who came through Wigan's academy system. Yeah,
I think sometimes it's not all about of course everybody's boyhood dream is to play at the highest level that they can possibly get to. Yeah. But even going out down to current League 2 now, the teams that are down there, you've got ex-Premier League teams like Oldham in the conference now.
Yeah.
So the level these days of the structure of the teams that form that league are unbelievable. It's at a really good standard.
It is, yeah.
So how did the move? So you went from coaching at Wigan. Did you go straight from there to Bolton?
I went to Bolton, and worked in the academy system there. So I went back to working with the under-12s, and then progressed from the 12s to the 14s, the 15s, the 16s, then got the 18s job, and then obviously went on to do the 23s. So it was a progression that I'd done all the younger players and did that for 5 years, a number of years, yeah. But obviously, I suppose going through the different age groups, you kind of was you working with the same group of players? Or I started with the under-12s, and then I literally took them through the years, people like Zach Clough and Robert Holding and people like that came through the system. So and then eventually I ended up taking them at under-16s level, and then it was a lad called Pete Farrell was the under-18s coach. He moved on, and I was still doing the 16s, and then someone, I can't remember, it was Jimmy Phillips or Chris Sully, asked me, would you be interested in doing the 18s on an interim basis? So I said, yeah, of course I would. So I did it, and then they gave me the job on a full-time basis, and then progressed with the 18s and had a bit of success with them, and then the under-23 jobs came up, and then I got an interview for that and took it and got it, and then had a bit of success with that as well with the boys who came through that.
So what year would it have been for the under-23s?
It's from 4 years just before lockdown.
Right,
So
okay.
from 20...
So it would have been... 2020 was lockdown.
So from
2019.
For the last 3 or 4 years I was doing the 23, so
right,
from
okay.
like 16 to 2020, yeah.
And the players at the time in that under-23s?
A lad called Zach Clough, who we sold to Nottingham Forest for $2.5 million. Robert Holding we sold to Arsenal for, I don't know what it was, 3 million, something like that.
There's nothing these days that money,
no,
is it?
But at the time, Josh Feller was another one who came through. A lad called Jeff King, who ended up playing at Chesterfield. Niall Meyer, who played at league clubs. Grimsby was at. Yeah, so quite a few. Do you know what? I think I've got a list at home, and I bet there's 20 players on that list who came through the system who've all played professional football.
Do you keep an eye on them?
I try to, yeah. Do
you still keep in touch with them from time to time?
Not actually keep in touch, but football's it's a family, and then if you ever see them or you see them on the telly, I was walking through Manchester the other week, and there was a lad called Lewis Montrose, and I hadn't seen him for years, and he was another lad who went on to play a decent level, and he came up to me and reminiscing about, I loved it when you coached us and blah blah. So I've had some fantastic, great feedback from players who I've coached and looked after through the years in football, and I've never had one lad come up to me and say, "Oh, I didn't like you," or blah blah blah. I've had some really good feedback from the lads who I looked after. I really enjoyed my time doing it.
Which is, I suppose, nice to hear, because I find when I'm in coaching, nobody really gives you any feedback. You get it from the parents from behind you sometimes. And you don't really do it for feedback, and you don't do it for a thank you. I mean, it's a little bit different when you're employed and you're a paid coach, because obviously that's your job, and you're there to do the best, obviously. But sometimes it's just good to know, no matter if you're getting paid or not paid, when you see that player that you've developed and whether that's coming through your first team or goes on for a transfer fee somewhere else, and you see that they have this great career, it's kind of like you got to be proud of yourself and think, I've had a little part to play in that, or a big part to play.
Well, that's I always say I've just had a little part, because overall there's other people within the football club and the structure of the club who've provided that facility and that opportunity for that player. Maybe I've been at the head of it because I've been the coach at the time, but there's other people alongside you, work alongside you, who are also a part of that. Tony Kelly was a big part of that. The academy manager, the academy staff, everybody within the football club should get a pat on the back for that player progressing and going on to do what he does.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
being the coach at the time, people put two and two together and think, oh, David Lee was a coach of Robert Holding, but there's more to it than David Lee doing it. There was a lot of other people who got Robert to that stage. And I just ticked his box to say, yes, away you go. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
No, it's unbelievable. So do you get to watch many football matches in your spare time now?
Do you know what, Martin? When I finished on the coaching side of it, I finished because I fell out of love with the game. Purely because I'd done everything I possibly could as a player. I'd done everything I possibly could as a coach. And then when I got the opportunity as first team manager at Bolton Wanderers and I had the interview, and obviously I didn't get the job, but I thought I was in the prime positions and I had the accolades and the experience to do the job, and I didn't get it. It was that time then to make a strong decision, and then I made that decision to come out of football. And as soon as I made that decision to come out of football, it was tough, but I knew I'd made the right decision because I hadn't got the heart and the passion to then go back into it and start again, knowing that I'd reached the pinnacle of where I thought I'd get to, and then maybe just that final step to be the manager, and didn't get it. And it didn't scar me, but it put things into perspective that football isn't the be-all and end-all in life. And then it was a transition that I went through, and I'm so glad I went through that transition, because I'm enjoying life and having a little successful business now and enjoying life to the maximum, and I have absolutely no regrets.
Yeah, football, like anything in life, it's just a percentage of your life. It's not 100%.
No.
You know, that football, it might just be like 40%. You've got 60% of business, families, so many other things that make your life complete.
I think when you come out of football, you realise that there is another part of your life, and it's not just about football. When I was in it, I loved it, and as I said, I gave 100% in everything I did. But when you come out of it and you take a backward step, you just think, wow, there is more to life than football. And I had a good innings in it. I had 36 years non-stop in professional sport, which not many people can say they've had that. I've had some fantastic experiences and some great times, and achieved things and been successful and done things that many people not are envious of it, but would love to have had that opportunity to do. And I've done it, and I relished it and enjoyed it, all my hands up, drawn a line through it, done it, been there, seen it, done it, and move on to different things.
Now it's in the next chapter.
Yeah, into Didsy's domestic deals.
Just let's just finish up on that very quickly. If how did the idea come about, and what made you go into sort of running a business in domestic appliances?
I'd say exactly what it was. We were in the coach's room at Bolton Wanderers, and one or two of the lads, the staff, were talking about this thing called iBidder, which is where you go on and it's like an auction site. And I'd never even heard of it, and one or two of the lads had bought stuff on it, and I thought, oh, do you know what, I'll have a go on it. So I went on to it, and we needed a washing machine for a rental property. So I ended up bidding on a washing machine, and then I thought I'll bid on one or two and see if I can win one. So I won both of them, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? So we put one in the rental house, and I think, what am I going to do with the other one? So Joanne, my missus, says, oh, I'll put it on eBay. So I literally put it on eBay, and then within an hour I could have probably sold between 25 and 30 because that many people wanted it. I thought, gosh, there's something in this. So it was during lockdown, so I thought, well, I'll buy another, and did it, and buy another, and that's how it started. So then obviously I went on to the tutorials, because you couldn't go anywhere because it was on lockdown. I went on the tutorials and looked about machines and looked in depth of repairing them and what sales, and I did a lot of homework on it and really grafted at it. And 4.5 years down the line now, I'm a limited company. I've got 2 vehicles on the go. I've got a unit. I've also in partnership with a friend called Howard, who has a shop on London Road in Preston, where I put my white goods in his shop and obviously share some of the profit that way. So it's called North Refrigeration on London Road in Preston. And again, we met through the gym and whatever, and we got talking, and we trust each other. So I use his facility, and we get on really well, and business is going from strength to strength. It's fantastic.
Excellent. I mean, it's some journey coming from that football background to being self-employed. I think a lot of people evaluated their lives a little bit through the pandemic.
Yes.
They had a lot of time to stop, think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And so absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is make sure you pass all your details for your websites and how we can contact, obviously, on your domestic appliances. So, but anything that you want to finish up on?
No, I think it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Life's good to me. I love what I'm doing. If I've got any advice for young players, just go and enjoy it and play with a smile on your faces. If any of the parents listen to this, take a backward step, encourage your lads or your girls to go and play football, but don't put any pressure on them. I mean, there was no pressure on me whatsoever when I was a young lad and I came through and become a so-called successful professional footballer. If you give them the opportunity to do it, and they take that opportunity without all the chasing the stars and the parents thinking my son's at Bolton Wanderers or my daughter's at Manchester United, just let them go and play and enjoy it. And finally, if you're given an opportunity in life, give everything you possibly can and have no regrets doing it. Because if you don't give 100% and you don't make it, you'll regret it. Give 100% and you make it, it's even better.
Definitely good. That's unbelievable sound advice. It's something I'll take forward for my next 30 years. So, Didsy, thanks very much, mate.
No,
thanks
pleasure, Martin.
I really appreciate it, and all the best.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.